Welcome to the show. May the 4th be with you. 4 things to talk about today. It's spring. That means foraging. So I'm going to tell you how my asparagus search went today. We're going to talk about how to look for ramps or wild leeks. We'll also explain what to search for morels and then how to prepare them. We got Mike Kempenick, the gentleman forager, on the show this week. And 4th, murder hornets. All right, we're going to start with the hornets. My sister sent me a link yesterday to a YouTube video showing a guy getting purposely stung by something called an executioner wasp. While trying to figure out who this guy is, I was reading some of the comments and I started to learn about murder hornets. Have you heard about these yet? That's the big news today. According to CBS News, they're roughly a 2-inch long hornet. They've made their way to the United States now for the first time ever. They're from Asia. It's an Asian giant hornet called Vespa mandarinia. It's been known to kill up to 50 people a year in Japan. And according to the New York Times, it has a potential to devastate U.S. bee populations, which have already been declining. Hornets attack the beehives, decapitating and killing the adults, then eating the larvae. What? Well, in some better news, the fish are biting. And I've seen some posts about spring foraging. People are starting to find some morels out there. So today I was invited by my buddy to go search for some asparagus. Love asparagus. If you know of some known asparagus patches, obviously you can start there. But once you get an idea of what to look for, you start to recognize things as you just drive around looking and you see them in ditches and whatever. Go, oh, there's some asparagus there. Okay. So you identify kind of that asparagus plant, and I'll look for the old ones, and then you start to search down underneath and you can find new shoots of new asparagus sprouting up underneath there. I think we're a little bit early. This is all I found today during my search for asparagus where I'm at here in western Minnesota. Now, ramps might be a little bit easier to find, although I'm no foraging expert. I've never really done much looking for ramps or wild leeks. But I've had an expert on my radio show. Mike Kempenick is the gentleman forager, and I asked him on one of our past episodes about wild leeks or ramps, and where do you find them?
So a ramp is essentially a wild leek, and it has the interesting quality of having a flavor profile of both onion and garlic. And it's completely edible from leaf to stem. It's really delicious. I mean, it's anything you can think of that you use onion and garlic in. Ramps would be like onion and garlic on steroids. And by that, I don't mean that it's overwhelmingly powerful in its flavor, just that it's a very unctuous flavor profile. I don't think I've ever met anybody who's had ramps and didn't like them if they at least were open to onions and garlic to begin with.
And how do you identify them? Where do you look for them?
Well, it has a pretty broad leaf. It's typically 4 to 6 inches across. It looks very much like a table onion if you were to dig one up and look at it. It has the rhizomes kind of dangling off the end there. It has sort of a burgundy color to it as it gets down towards the base. Where do you find them? They're typically in low-lying areas that hold a lot of moisture. They might even get a little bit flooded each spring. So you won't find them, on the top of windswept ridges or anything like that. You'll kind of want to be down in valley areas. And the other thing is it's kind of easy because you can smell them usually before you can find them.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if you find ramps, there's usually a lot of them, and the smell can be really pungent. In fact, the ramp farm that we pick is a good friend of mine I've known since high school, and I got started picking there because one year I went up for opening of fishing, and he said, I don't know what this onion smell is every year, but I have to put up with it for a month, and it's driving me nuts. And I looked around to realize you have 40 acres of wild ramps growing here, my friend. I'm happy to help you control this.
So, I bet you are.
Yes.
So so you find some, you harvest some. Is that something you're digging the roots out and trying to take the whole plant?
Yeah, there's a lot of debate that goes on all the forums and the boards. People are concerned, and rightly so, about being sustainable and how they harvest plants, especially because unlike mushrooms, you absolutely can decimate the population to a point where it won't come back. So in the case of ramps, if you have an area that's your area to pick, You really shouldn't take more than about 10% of the crop each year. It takes about 8 to 10 years for a ramp to grow to full maturity. And so if you're taking less than 10% a year, one can assume that you're not going to impact the total population of that crop. Some people like to say don't take the bulbs at all, leave them in the ground and just take the leaves. But honestly, it's not necessary if you practice what I just said and just take less than 10%.
And then once you take them home, how do you care for them? How do you like to cook them?
They're pretty easy to take care of because you can just put them in a bucket of water and the root systems will continue to feed it and they'll maintain themselves quite well for, probably a week to 2 weeks. As far as preparing them, the same way that you might prepare any other onion. If you want to do a slow saute on them to caramelize them and get some of those sugars released and sweeten them up a little bit, you can do that. If you were in the woods and you took a bite of one, it would be like a very strong table onion. For people who love onions and garlic, they will love that.
People love finding morels. I also talked to Mike about how to search for black morels in the north or yellow morels in the southern part of the state. Hear everybody's little sayings. Oh, I like to wait until the buds are the size of squirrels' ears, or there's different ways that people, different little signs that people look for. Is there anything you look for out there other than temperature?
Well, all of those signs, for the most part, unless you throw one at me I haven't heard before, are pretty accurate. Because really all they're doing is giving you the same signal as to what ground temperatures are. So, for instance, when an oak tree's leaves are about the size of a squirrel's ear, well, the ground temperature at 7 inches or so is probably in the low 50s range. The same thing for when dandelions start to go to seed. Those things are just another indicator of soil temperatures, and that's the same thing that we're looking for morels. Is we want a soil temperature to be in that 55 to 58 sort of range is when they'll begin to fruit. And then once that soil warms too much, then they're going to shut down for good.
And that's something that's you'll actually take a thermometer and stick it in the ground and go about 4 inches underground.
Yeah, if you go 4 or 5 inches and take a reading, and if you see temperatures that are, certainly if you see temperatures that aren't in the 50s, you can probably just put that thermometer back in your pocket and head home and watch a good movie.
And not just temperature, and talking about some of the other things that you look for, but there's specific trees is where you'll find these morels.
Right. So in the southern part of the state, it's mostly elms that the morels are going to relate to. We have a lot of elm trees, obviously. In the northern part of the state, we don't have a lot of elm trees, and we have a different kind of morel that grows up there, a little different species. And they'll, more often than not, they'll be around poplar or aspen. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't find any morels that could grow in an aspen grove or cottonwood. Sometimes you'll find along the river bottoms. But it's a bit like fishing or hunting, right? You want to go where you have the most chance of success, not where you might find that one northern in a 2-foot bay.
Right. And you won't always find them right up next to the tree trunk, right?
No, they absolutely can extend the full width of that root system underground. And a good way of sort of determining how far that might extend is to just look at the tree itself and imagine it was laying on the ground and you drew a circle using that perimeter. That's about how far the root system will extend. So, on an adult tree, typically, you could find morels growing as far away as 100 feet from that tree.
Okay, you found some morels, you get home, now what do you do with them?
Well, if you're me, when you get them home, you immediately cut them in half and wash them under water a little bit to make sure there's all the grits out of that, and then immediately throw them in the pan. I probably cook them off a little bit just to get rid of some of the moisture first. And after I've boiled off a little bit of that moisture that comes out, I'm going to add some butter and just brown them up. And maybe I'd have a tad of garlic in there, but people ask often, well, what do I do with this mushroom, whether it's a morel or a chanterelle or maitake? And the answer is super simple. You really can use these mushrooms in the same ways that you already use, more conventional white button mushrooms or creminis. You can use them in all the same recipes. I guess my advice would be to think of it though in terms of, I don't want to put this into a recipe where the rest of the flavors are going to overpower that really unique flavor of a morel. So I like to keep it simple. Pasta is a great way to go, or just as I mentioned, just frying a few in butter. If you want to put some breadcrumbs on them and give a little crunch to it, or you can get creative, but I think simple is better in most respects.
Well, I didn't find much for asparagus today. I did find this wildflower out on the prairie during our search. I had no idea what it was. I'm obviously not much of a flower guy. So I did a little bit of searching. I believe it's called a pasque-flower, which is one of the first flowers to bloom on the prairie. It's become so popular that South Dakota and Manitoba both declared it as their official flower, with South Dakota adding the motto, "I lead" to it, which is fitting since it's the first wildflower to bloom each spring. All right, if you missed our most recent show and you have a 45-minute drive or 48 minutes to kill, our podcast is a perfect option for that. You can stream it on demand on our website, sportingjournalradio.com, or you can also use your favorite podcast app, iTunes. Mine just says podcasts, or you can also use iHeartRadio, which will, once you subscribe, they'll send you an email when a new show is available. Really cool show coming. I think we're going to have this tomorrow with Matt Soberg.
They're grabbing onto the logs so tight. So if you see some of the really good video of rough grouse out there when they're drumming, focus on the feet. They are straining with everything they have, and oftentimes they'll even slide a little bit, and that's what causes the scratching that you see on the log.
And then later this week, we're going to talk to Jim Riley about hunting ducks in Argentina.
There's about 13 species of ducks, including the various tree ducks. We have several teal species. We have 2 pintails. One is the white cheek or Bahama pintail, and then we have the macero, or as we call it in the U.S., the yellow-billed pintail.
All right, thanks for watching. Now is the time to start thinking about chasing big walleyes on Devil's Lake. Get on the fish at Haybale Heights Campground and Resort. Haybale Heights makes it easy for you to make memories on legendary Devil's Lake with guided fishing and lodging packages. Or bring your own boat and rent one of their cabins on East Bay. Haybale Heights offers a private marina, fish cleaning station, and the opportunity to relax and enjoy your bucket list trip to Devil's Lake, North Dakota. To book your trip, visit haybaleheights.com. That's haybaleheights.com. Hey anglers, looking for a destination where walleyes, fresh air, and fish fries are a way of life? Look no further than the famous waters of Lake of the Woods. From Badette and the Rainy River to the main lake up to the Northwest Angle. Here you'll enjoy the best walleye catch rate in the state. Maybe you'll pursue world-class sturgeon, pike, or muskies. Plus you'll find lots of full-service resorts offering charter boats, delicious meals, and lots of Minnesota nice. Come experience the walleye capital of the world. Come experience Lake of the Woods. Catch the details at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. If trophy lake trout and monster northern pike are on your list this summer, book a trip to Tazen Lake Lodge in northwestern Saskatchewan.
Everything from numbers to big fish.
See pictures, videos, and more at TazenLake.com.
This is quite the fishery.
Our 5-star chef will feed you well after a day of chasing giants on Tazen Lake.
Dream come true.
Get rates, dates, and more of what you can expect.
It could be the best fishing you've ever had in your life.
At TazenLake.com. That's TazenLake.com. Tazen Lake Lodge is a proud partner of Tourism Saskatchewan.